over the span of your career. You started out as a consultant in Bain.
That's
You
right.
moved into private equity. You rejoined Bain as a case team leader. Then you joined PSP Academy and the Star Education Group, where we met and became good friends.
Absolutely.
We then sold off the company in 2018, and you are today the Communication and Strategy Chief for Singapore's leading institute, NTUC LearningHub. And the institute trains over 200,000 workers annually, from what I understand.
That's right.
And for those of you who aren't aware, Brian earned his first degree from Oxford and an MBA from Harvard. And Brian, this is a sterling track record. I like to start this conversation with understanding your thoughts around the intersection of business, strategy, and communication. You're in the middle of these three functions right now.
Yeah.
And what is it like being a communication head who also has a seat at the strategy table?
Absolutely. And I think this is such an interesting time with COVID-19 really driving so much uncertainty in a lot of businesses, but actually quite a lot of change as well. I don't know what the audience is feeling, but personally, I felt that I've never worked as hard, or things have not moved as fast, really as far as I can remember. Even when I was dealing with previous crises in 2008, 2009 for the global financial crisis, back then I was in the UK helping some of the banks that had collapsed and really trying to rescue them. Even that does not compare anything close to, I think, what we feel we're experiencing today with the volatility and the uncertainty that we have.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So one thing that I really found is businesses across the board are changing their business models. Most of the audience, who are in business, they might feel that digitalization has become a very, very big trend, and with all of these different ways of low touch economy, work from home, bringing in these digital tools. So having that speed of change has been a defining feature, I feel, of the past couple of months.
And what has been the biggest adjustment that you had to make traversing between strategic planning and then executing on communication and operational plans?
That's right. And to me, it's been quite interesting to have a comms role in this time. Historically, comms has always been about it's a bit more outward looking. In that we had to see what are the latest trends, match our company's narrative to that, and sort of make sure we tell our story in the most relevant way. I feel over the past couple of months, with so much change going on within the businesses, and businesses really redefining their customer segments, launching new products and with such speed and agility. Something like Singapore Airlines, where you used to be a sort of leading airline, and now having all their fleet grounded and having to come up with all these different ways of bringing people back to the plane. Business is changing so fast. Comms really needs to look inward rather than outward, and just make sure that we as comms professionals have our finger on the pulse of all the changes that are going on, and being able to explain that to the rest of the world. And I feel that that's a bit more of a challenge, because when I wear my internal hat from strategy, from execution, and you ask me, what's the next 3 months going to look like? What's the next 6 months going to look like? I have no idea. And so how then will a comms team be able to tell that story when even the business side is so uncertain? So I really feel it's a unique opportunity for comms to sort of have that seat at the table. We craft a narrative together with the business in a much more involved and hands-on way, and sort of really go through this change together.
So I want to dig a little bit deeper about your experience in trying to lead communications amid COVID-19.
Yeah.
And COVID has changed the way we run campaigns, and even how IPRS as a non-profit has been operating. How has COVID-19 impacted the way you've done communication, outreach, lead generation at LearningHub?
Sure. The short answer is that definitely a lot has changed, but I think that the key channels have remained the same. So digital was always important, even more so now. I think fantastic PR and fantastic stories out there was important, more so now. I think we really ramped up our research and our thought leadership, knowing that there's so much uncertainty out there, hoping to give people a bit more guidance as to, from a skills perspective, what are the skills in demand and what are employers doing, etc. So I think the how is it's maybe more of an adjustment, maybe more of a rebalancing, but the what we talk about has completely changed. The what used to be business as usual. We had face-to-face courses. Now, over the last 6 months, we've transitioned from 100% face-to-face courses to 90%, 95% virtual. And when you think of NTUC Learning Hubs, our target segment, some of them are quite sophisticated, but a large number of them may be less tech savvy. They may be, more mature and maybe and perhaps maybe lower income and would face a bit more struggles with virtual learning. I think we're really here to help them through this type of really seismic shift in how they learn. But in terms of a comms perspective, how do you reach this type of audience and make sure that they are assured that even though it's shifted, the learning style and the learning platform has shifted completely, they still have the confidence in the quality and in the rigor of what they're being taught?
And so drawing on your experience, spending many years in the education sector, you've seen how universities, training institutes have become one of the last bastions of one of the last bastions of a legacy model that hasn't quite kept up with disruptions. We've been talking about teaching disruptions in school, but if not for COVID-19, I must say, home-based learning and virtual classrooms might never have been embraced by many of these institutions. What do you think needs to happen for educators to preach about disruption and embrace disruption in their teaching?
Yes, it's very interesting. I think talk of disruption in the education sector, I've heard it for the last 10 years. Online universities are coming. What will happen to the traditional models? But up until this year, I think online learning has been treated as important. It's there, but it's not the central, it's not the main method of delivery. And I think this year has really brought that to the forefront. And I think a lot of education institutions, ourselves, universities, have realized, even schools, even tutoring agencies have realized, is that there is real value in the in-person, because online, yes, you can replicate. It gives you so much access, it gives you so much convenience, but the level of in-person interaction, the role plays, the games that you can do in class, the things to make it into group discussions, it's possible to do maybe on a Zoom environment. You have breakout rooms, but it's really not the same. And yet there's still so many benefits of online in terms of being able to have that convenience. Obviously, with safety is a big concern during COVID. So what I've seen most education institutes now struggle with is how to create an effective blended model, online plus offline together, and how do you maintain the good parts about the in-person experience, but you really don't need to be in person every day. You're not going to have an interactive discussion for every single day of the class. Sometimes it is just a lecture style download, and that can be done virtually, or that can be done from the comfort of your home at any time, any place. So what we've seen universities grapple with is, and any institution grapple with, is how to make that a good experience so that it feels integrated and not choppy. I think everyone's doing it now. I would say it's a version 1.0. Maybe it feels a bit disjointed here and there because everyone just had to transform within 2 months. And really the next stage is how do we make it excellent? How do we make this a true blended 2.0, 3.0 experience?
Okay, thank you. So for those of you who have just joined this IPRS PR Leader Series, we are delighted to have Brian San, Head of Communication, Strategy, and Director of LearningHub's Career Agility Division. And please post your questions for Brian on our group chat, and we will try to cover them over the course of our session today. It's a half an hour session. If we are not able to cover all questions, please feel free to tune in to our recap, and you'd be able to get more in-depth visitation of what we've covered in our half an hour discussion today. Brian, I want to just take a step back now. We talked about the future of education and how organizations are adjusting to home-based learning. I'd like to talk about you. You've had an experience of working in the commercial sector. Now you're with Singapore's largest social enterprise, and that's the NTUC Group. What are some of the challenges that you faced becoming a leader in the NTUC sector? How do people cross over from the private sector to joining and being a part of the labor movement?
Sure. I have to say it's been a very meaningful journey to be a part of NTUC, and you really see the focus of NTUC ourselves, the social enterprises, be they Fair Price or Income or First Campus, they have on really creating that social good. I think for us that social good is making sure our workers have the right skills, have to remain ready and resilient. And if there's anything that this past couple of months have taught us, is that with so much up and downs of the industries, needing to retool and reskill in a short order to maybe shift industries or shift jobs or remain that flexibility is just going to be critical. We might not be able to save every job, but we can make sure and we can really help every worker have that sort of good livelihood. So I think from anyone from a more commercial background coming in, I think one thing is that social side really comes to the fore. It does add a degree of complexity because you are trying to balance multiple objectives. I think obviously all social enterprises are still enterprises. We have to remain financially viable. May not be profit maximizing, but we still need to be sustainable and not be a draw and a liability on the financial side. But once those sort of baseline viability targets are met, it really becomes how do we maximize that level of impact? And one thing that I've realized as part of comms is that the biggest thing that we can do, at least for LearningHub, is just to have a fantastic having our comms and our narrative really encourage people to learn. Interestingly, it's harder than you think because learning is not always fun. I think long day at work, you ask people, would you rather watch Netflix or would you rather do a course on data analytics? Most people will choose the Netflix. Especially now when there's so much stress going on at work and you don't have time to catch up with family, who's going to take that time to really learn about blockchain or coding? It takes concentration and discipline. And so I think our role as comms is to really tell those stories of people who have done that successfully, what on the benefit side, what they've been able to do in terms of advancing in their careers, as well as sort of tap into people emotionally and sort of understand a bit about what drives them to learn and see if we can really sort of help them sort of tap into that to be able to find that motivation.
Okay, and speaking about motivation, we've got one question from Janelle. What do you find most challenging in driving out internal communication or internal campaigns with regard to motivating employees to upskill while balancing work during this time?
Really, it's so anytime you send out any sort of training or HR sends out stuff, it's or internal comms, we send out stuff, most people will say we have no time. And in fact, we ran a survey of over 1,500 learners recently. No time was far and away the number one reason for people not upskilling. So there's two ways that we've gone around that. One is that we've made learning as accessible and as low cost as possible. Really fortunate to be in Singapore. I think with SkillsFuture, it's once you have SkillsFuture funding plus the SkillsFuture credit, if you're a union member, you can tap on UTAP. You'd be paying tens of dollars or low hundreds for very, very excellent level quality of courses.
And everyone can be a union member.
And everyone can be a union member. And it's the benefits in terms of both the representation, but also the support that you have for upskilling. Every union member gets a $250 allowance every year for upskilling, which just really helps on the cost side. Ourselves at LearningHub, we launched our free learning platform. We put 100 courses up for free. We were staggered by the reception of that. I think within 6 months, we have over 100,000 users on this platform. Really spoke to us about the appetite of people learning. So I think from internal comms, it's about showing that the convenience is there. You think of it a cost benefit. The cost is low because it's low financial cost, low time cost, because you can really do it anytime, anywhere now virtually, and the benefits are high. And the benefits is what we found to be the most convincing is first the intellectual part that yes, this is a high growth skill. You should learn data analytics, you should learn Tableau, you should learn all these things. It does help your career, as well as that emotional side with sort of success stories and a bit more of that inspirational element as well.
Okay, so I want to talk about the second question that we received, and this is regarding NTUC LearningHub's communication approach. You mentioned that you launched 100,000 free courses online. Curious to find out how has the methods changed in how you've publicized these courses, and how do you publicize these courses in a fragmented digital media landscape? There's so many channels to use these days. Has the choice of your channels changed? And how have you articulated that NTUC LearningHub story through all these channels?
Yeah, I think channels have been the channels are there, but I think the relative balance has been has shifted. I think PR and media coverage was always important, but I think especially so this year as one major pillar, and I think we were able to reach to get to that awareness for the 100,000 learners. We're able to reach a very wide range. Historically, for LearningHub, we'd be in the more I guess maybe more traditional media, Straits Times, Business Times, CNA, etc., and that will always remain the core. But especially for this, when learning, you think of it more broadly as a lifestyle choice. We were fortunate to be featured in places like Esquire and Clio, and when Circuit Breaker came, no one could go out. We actually made it to the top 10 things you should do this weekend, and that type of reframing it as more of something that first, it really helps that it's free, which you use free as a first step and you build onto the paid courses later. But that really helps, and I think that exposure was very positive. The second thing is that we did tap onto a lot more digital communities, and for example, now I think we've really seen a proliferation of more digital support communities, especially, for example, in freelancers, in certain sectors, as people sort of share tips and share job opportunities. We were fortunate to sort of get into some of those, and a lot of the freelancers, when one used it, and then we're really big for swimming coaches, and we're really big in this certain sector. So that influencer / community type of outreach, from a commerce perspective, has been a significant rebalancing in that direction as well.